Earth screamed in defeat like a wounded beast facing extinction, as Admiral Lawrence Boyd prepared to surrender humanity's shattered fleet to the Iridian invaders. Boyd stood on the Indomitable's bridge, his eyes locked on the bleak void of space and the gutted husks of humanity's last defense fleet. Boyd felt Izar's reptilian smirk before the Iridian Emperor even materialized on the view screen. "Admiral Boyd, I commend your courage in continuing this pointless resistance, but courage alone cannot save your species from annihilation." Boyd's hand hovered over the treaty screen. The formal surrender, the damning capitulation that would bind humanity as slaves to their alien conquerors. After a century of valiant resistance, of spilled human blood across a dozen contested star systems, Earth had mere hours left until Izar's planet-killer payload detonated in the core. And Boyd knew that with his fleet crippled and ammunition expended in that final desperate stand above Mars, humanity had no remaining military options. Only abject total submission to Iridian tyranny could save the mother world now. Boyd forced his face into a neutral mask as he met Izar's condescending leer. He couldn't let the alien scum see the burning rage simmering just beneath his calm exterior. The unquenchable human need for vengeance and retribution. Behind his back, Boyd's other hand clenched into a trembling fist, nails digging bloody crescents into his palm, physical pain to anchor him, to keep the overwhelming despair at bay, as he stared down humanity's darkest hour, knowing that with one press of a button he would condemn his species to an eternity of servitude and oppression. But as his finger made contact with the treaty screen, as the damning words "unconditional surrender" materialized, a cold certainty crystallized in Boyd's gut. This was not the end. He would lull the Iridians into complacency, let them grow soft and arrogant in their dominion over a defeated Earth. And then, when they least expected it, when their hubris was at its peak, he would strike back with the full, unbridled fury of the human spirit. He would find a way to make Izar pay for every human life lost in this godforsaken war, for every dream shattered, for every soul-crushing atrocity inflicted. Even if it took him the rest of his days, Admiral Boyd silently vowed that humanity would rise again, and blood would flow in rivers on that day of days when mankind finally reclaimed the stars. Boyd's finger trembled as it pressed against the treaty screen, the damning words "unconditional surrender" searing into his retinas. As the text blinked green, signifying the document was signed, a tsunami of barely contained rage threatened to overcome his forced facade of calm. Admiral Boyd's eyes flicked up to the view screen to see Emperor Izar's reptilian face twist into a victorious smirk before the feed abruptly cut off. Boyd slammed his fist onto the console, a resounding metallic clang echoing across the bridge as sparks flew from the abused interface. He whirled to face his bridge crew, all of their faces mirrors of Boyd's own turbulent emotions, anger, despair, the bitter sting of defeat. But Boyd knew he couldn't let them wallow. Not now, not when there was still a chance, however slim, to make this right. "Listen up," Boyd barked, his voice cutting through the oppressive silence. "I want repair crews working round the clock on the Indomitable and any other ships that can still fly, and I want it done quietly. You hear me? The last thing we need is the Iridians getting wind of this." His crew nodded, a few eye admirals ringing out as they turned to their stations with renewed purpose. Boyd stalked off the bridge, his boots ringing against the metal deck plates as he made his way to his private quarters. The door had barely hissed shut behind him before he was pulling up a secure comm channel, inputting the codes for his most trusted officers. Their faces flickered into view, holograms floating above Boyd's desk. From their expressions he could tell they were expecting a morale-boosting speech, some final words of comfort in the face of their species' darkest hour. Well, Boyd had something else in mind. Boyd leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with a newfound determination. As we speak, Izar is on his command ship, celebrating his victory. He thinks he's untouchable, but he's about to learn just how wrong he is. I want you to gather any remaining human forces, any ships, any soldiers still able to fight. Prepare for a coordinated strike on the Iridian command ship. We're going to hit them hard and fast, and we're going to capture that scaly bastard. If we can get him to reveal the location of that planet killer, We might still have a shot at saving Earth. Boyd could see the shock on his officers' faces morph into steely resolve. They signed off with crisp salutes, hurrying to carry out their orders. Boyd collapsed into his chair, pulling up the schematics of Izar's ship. He studied the rotating hollow image, marking weak points, entry vectors, anything that could give them even the slightest advantage. Boyd knew this plan was a gamble. Some might even call it a suicide mission, but he also knew that he'd rather go down fighting than live under the yoke of Iridian rule. This was humanity's last stand, their final roll of the dice. And by God, Admiral Lawrence Boyd was going to make it count. Boyd's eyes narrowed as the encrypted message flashed across his console. The sender's ID was unfamiliar, but the subject line immediately caught his attention. Urgent assistance for the human resistance. Boyd's finger hovered over the delete button, assuming it was just another desperate plea from some backwater colony. But something made him hesitate. He opened the message. Admiral Boyd, I am Zax, a young officer in the Iridian military. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I assure you, my intentions are sincere. I am part of a growing rebel faction that is sickened by Emperor Izar's brutal subjugation of your people. We want to help you strike back. Boyd scoffed. A Iridian rebel faction? It had to be a trap. His finger moved to delete the message, but the next lines made him pause. To prove my sincerity, I'm sending you classified Iridian military codes that will allow you to bypass the command ship's security systems. Use them to get your people aboard undetected. I will also provide detailed schematics of the ship's layout and Izar's likely location. Boyd's mind raced with possibilities. This was the break they needed, the chance to even the odds. He quickly adjusted his attack plan, selecting his best infiltrators for a covert boarding action. Lieutenant Samir Patel, Boyd's most trusted officer, would lead the team. As Patel's squad prepared to depart in a cloaked shuttle, Boyd gathered the remnants of Earth's fleet. The Indomitable's weapons were primed, ready to draw the Iridians' fire away from the infiltration team. Boyd's voice crackled over the fleet-wide comm. All ships, this is Admiral Boyd. Commence attack run on the Iridian command vessel. We must buy time for our boarding party. Focus fire on their weapon systems and shields. And Godspeed to us all. The human fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. The Iridian ship loomed ahead, its imposing bulk bristling with cannon turrets. The Indomitable shuddered as enemy fire slammed into its shields. Sparks rained down on the bridge as consoles overloaded. Boyd gripped the arms of his command chair, his eyes locked on the view screen. Steady, he urged as another volley rocked the ship. We have to hold out, just a little longer. On the command ship's bridge, Emperor Izar watched the battle unfold with a sneer. These humans were tenacious, he had to admit. Even in defeat, they fought like cornered animals. Concentrate all fire on their flagship, Izar ordered. I want Admiral Boyd to watch as we rip his precious Indomitable apart, piece by piece. The Iridian cannon swiveled, locking onto the Indomitable's damaged hull. Izar leaned forward in his throne, savoring the moment. Soon the human resistance would be nothing more than a memory, a footnote in the glorious history of the Iridian Empire. But even as the command ship's weapons powered up for a final devastating salvo, a series of explosions suddenly bloomed along its hull. Izar staggered as the deck shuddered beneath him. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing. Report, Izar bellowed. A terrified officer turned from his console. My lord, our defenses, they're offline. Someone has sabotaged us from within. Izar's eyes widened in disbelief. How was this possible? His ship was impenetrable, his crew loyal unto death, unless... The Emperor's gaze snapped to the security feeds. There in the heart of his ship was a small group of humans, weapons drawn, making their way towards the bridge, and leading them, a figure Izar recognized all too well from the intelligence reports. Lieutenant Samir Patel, Boyd's right-hand man. Izar's claws dug into the arms of his throne, rage boiling in his veins. So the humans thought they could strike at him directly. They would learn the folly of such arrogance. The Emperor rose to his feet, drawing his personal plasma blade. "Send all available troops to the bridge," he snarled. "I will deal with these intruders myself." As Izar stalked from the bridge, his mind seethed with dark thoughts. Admiral Boyd had just made a fatal mistake. The humans would pay for this insult with their lives, and their precious Earth would burn. Lieutenant Marcus Reeves and his infiltration team materialized inside the Iridian command ship in a blinding flash of plasma. The hull plating bubbled and hissed as their advanced cutting tools carved a precise opening. Reeves was first through the breach, his weapon up and scanning for hostiles. The dimly lit corridor stretched before them, a serpentine labyrinth of gleaming metal and pulsing conduits. Reeves signaled his team forward, their boots clanging softly on the deck plates as they advanced in a tight formation. "Stay sharp," Reeves whispered over the comm. "Zax's intel puts the control room 200 meters ahead, but expect heavy resistance." As if on cue, a barrage of plasma bolts sizzled past Reeves's helmet, scorching the bulkhead. A phalanx of Iridian guards stormed around the bend, their reptilian eyes glinting with malice. "Contact front," Reeves barked, diving for cover behind a structural support. His team scattered, finding what scant protection they could in the sparse corridor. Plasma flew thick and fast, the air ionizing with the heat of the exchange. Reeves leaned out, sighting a Iridian guard in his crosshairs. He squeezed the trigger, feeling the satisfying kick of his rifle as the round found its mark, punching through the alien's armor in a spray of green ichor. "Flank left," Reeves ordered, priming a plasma grenade. "Suppressing fire on my mark." His team unleashed a blistering volley, forcing the Iridians to seek shelter. In that brief reprieve, Reeves lobbed the grenade, its blinding detonation engulfing the enemy position. They advanced in a hail of covering fire, leapfrogging from cover to cover. The control room doors loomed ahead, heavily reinforced blast shields sealing the entrance. Reeves slapped a breaching charge on the seam, his team stacking up on either side. The explosion ripped the doors asunder, smoke and debris billowing into the room beyond. They stormed in, weapons bristling, but skidded to a halt at the sight that greeted them. There, amid the banks of consoles and flickering holo displays, stood a towering figure clad in Baroque battle armor. Its eyes blazed with cruel intelligence, its stance radiating coiled menace. "Crux," Reeves breathed, recognizing Izar's second-in-command from the mission briefing. "Surrender now, and you may yet live." Crux lunged with blinding speed, his armored bulk belying his agility. Reeves barely managed to parry the first blow, the force of the impact sending shockwaves up his arm. They traded strikes in a brutal dance, Crux's strength pitted against Reeves's skill. Consoles shattered, and sparks flew as they rampaged across the control room, the rest of the infiltration team wisely keeping clear of the melee. Reeves felt his strength flagging, his armor denting under the relentless assault. But he noticed a pattern in Crux's attacks, a barely perceptible gap in the alien's defenses. Feinting left, Reeves dropped to one knee, his hand darting to his boot and the hidden plasma blade concealed there. As Crux overextended, Reeves lunged, driving the shimmering blade into the weak point at the Iridian's armpit. Crux roared in agony, his arm falling limp at his side. Reeves pressed his advantage, raining blows on the wounded alien until Crux collapsed, his armor sparking and smoking. "Secure him," Reeves panted, turning to his team. "And lock down this room. We can't let them retake control." As his men set to work, Reeves activated his comm, his voice urgent but triumphant. "Admiral Boyd, this is Reeves. We have seized the control room and disabled the command ship's defenses. I repeat, the package is wrapped. You are clear to begin your assault on Izar. Good hunting, sir." Admiral Boyd's eyes burned with a fierce intensity as Reeves's message crackled over the comm. The moment of truth had arrived. "All ships, this is Admiral Boyd," his voice boomed across the fleet-wide channel. "Commence full assault on the Iridian command vessel. Focus fire on the breach points. Let's crack this bastard open like an egg." The Indomitable surged forward, its engines flaring bright as stars. The remaining human ships fell into formation, a phalanx of vengeance and retribution. Plasma torpedoes leapt from their tubes, blazing trails of destruction towards the command ship's ravaged hull. The Iridian vessel shuddered under the onslaught, explosions blossoming across its once impregnable armor. Atmosphere vented from gaping wounds, debris tumbling into the void. Iridian fighters swarmed to intercept, their plasma cannons stitching deadly lines of fire. But the human fleet met them head-on, their own fighters scything through the enemy ranks. Dogfights erupted, ships twisting and jinking in a lethal dance. The void lit up with the strobe flash of detonations, the silent screams of dying ships. Amidst the chaos, Boyd led a heavily armed boarding party in a lightning strike on the command ship. Their assault shuttle punched through the weakened hull, disgorging the admiral and his elite squad into the heart of the enemy stronghold. They charged through the corridors, weapons spitting plasma, cutting down Iridian troops with cold efficiency. The air crackled with the heat of battle, the deck plates slick with blood and hydraulic fluid. Suddenly a new group of figures emerged from a side passage. Boyd tensed, his rifle snapping up, but then he recognized the lead figure, Zax, the Iridian rebel who had made this all possible. "Admiral Boyd," Zax called out, his voice tight with urgency. "My team has secured the route to Izar's chambers. We must hurry before he escapes." Boyd nodded curtly, signaling his squad to fall in with the rebels. Together this unlikely alliance forged ahead, united by a common purpose, the downfall of a tyrant. They burst into Izar's sanctum, weapons primed, only to see the Iridian Emperor scrambling towards an escape pod, his ornate robes billowing. Boyd's eyes locked with Izar's, a lifetime of hatred and enmity passing between them in that frozen instant. Then they were in motion, charging towards each other, energy blades leaping to their hands. They clashed in the center of the chamber, blades sparking, faces lit by the hellish glow. Izar was fast, his technique flawless, honed by centuries of duels. But Boyd fought with the strength of a man who had nothing left to lose, every blow fueled by the weight of 1 billion dead. Back and forth they danced, death a mere hair's breadth away at any moment. Izar's blade scored a glancing hit, searing across Boyd's chest plate, but the Admiral barely felt it, his focus absolute. Boyd feinted left, then lunged right, his blade slipping past Izar's guard to bite deep into the Iridian side. Izar stumbled back, his eyes widening in shock and pain. In that moment of distraction, Izar made a desperate lunge for the escape pod's control panel. Boyd saw his intent in an instant, the self-destruct, a final act of spite. But even as Boyd moved to intercept, Zax was there, tackling Izar away from the controls. They grappled, struggling for supremacy. Boyd wasted no time. He leapt forward, his blade a shining arc. One strike, one perfect thrust, and it was done. Izar slumped to the deck, his life's blood pooling, eyes staring sightless at the uncaring stars. Boyd stood over him, chest heaving, the magnitude of the moment crashing over him in a wave. It was over. The Iridian threat, the century of war and suffering, sir. With one blow, Boyd had ended it all. But even as the first flush of victory surged through him, the Admiral knew their true task was only beginning. Earth still needed to be saved, and that would require a reckoning with the secrets Izar had taken to his grave, the location of the planet-killing bomb hidden somewhere among the stars. But for now, for this one perfect moment, Boyd let himself savor the hard-won triumph. Boyd stood over Izar's crumpled form, his blade humming inches from the Iridian Emperor's throat. Around them, the command ship's bridge lay in ruins, control panels sparking, the stench of ozone thick in the air. Izar glared up at Boyd, defiance etched in every line of his reptilian face. "It's over, Izar," Boyd growled. "Your fleet is in shambles, your ship is ours. Now tell me where you hid the planet killer." Izar spat, his saliva sizzling on Boyd's blade. "Never. Earth will burn and you will die knowing you failed your precious species." Boyd's grip tightened, his trigger finger twitching. But before he could act, Zax stepped forward, placing a restraining hand on Boyd's shoulder. "Allow me, Admiral." Zax's voice was calm, but his eyes glinted with a hard light. He knelt beside Izar, his claws digging into the Emperor's shoulder. Izar hissed in pain, his mental defenses crumbling, as Zax applied his knowledge of Iridian interrogation techniques. Images flashed through Zax's mind, schematics, coordinates, a pulsing red orb nestled deep within the Earth's core. Zax recoiled, his breath coming in sharp gasps. As the Indomitable's crew scrambled to action, Boyd turned to Zax. "Can your rebels secure the command ship?" Zax nodded. "We'll lock down the bridge and root out any lingering loyalists. You focus on stopping that bomb." The drilling pod punched through the Earth's atmosphere like a fiery comet, its heat shields glowing white-hot. Inside, the bomb disposal team checked their gear with grim efficiency: plasma cutters, exosuits, pulse rifles. Sergeant Hawkins, the team leader, studied the holographic readout of the Earth's interior. "Pod will breach the crust in 30 seconds. Once we're in, we'll have to move fast. The heat and pressure down there will be off the charts." The pod shuddered as it transitioned from air to rock, its drill bit chewing through the Earth's crust at blinding speed. The team braced as the G-forces mounted, the pod walls groaning under the strain. Suddenly the drill bit broke through into a vast underground cavern. Hawkins frowned at his readings. "This shouldn't be here. It's not on any of our—" A plasma bolt slammed into the pod's hull, sending sparks flying. More shots followed, peppering the pod from all sides. "Ambush," Hawkins roared. "Iridian guards dug in deep, exosuits now." The team clambered into their armor, the heavy plating unfolding around them. They hit the pod's hatch controls, the explosive bolts blasting it free. All hell broke loose. Plasma fire crisscrossed the cavern as the Iridians opened up, their shots glancing off the team's exosuits. Hawkins led the charge, his pulse rifle spitting death. His men fanned out, seeking what little cover they could among the stalagmites. It was a battle on two fronts. The Iridians ahead, the crushing heat and pressure all around. Sweat poured down Hawkins' face, his suit's cooling systems straining to compensate. One of his men stumbled, his suit's servos whining in protest. A Iridian guard leapt from cover, his blade raised high. Hawkins cut him down with a burst to the chest, the shots echoing in the confined space. Inch by hard-fought inch, they pushed forward, the Iridians falling back before their onslaught. The bomb loomed ahead, a pulsing nightmare of alien tech. Hawkins could feel it, the warp and weft of space-time twisting around its dark heart. They reached the device, the Iridian guards reduced to a mere handful. Hawkins motioned his team forward, the bomb techs fanning out to assess the device. But as they approached, a klaxon blared from the bomb's housing. Panels slid back, revealing a tangled web of circuitry and fail-safes. The lead tech, Sanchez, cursed under his breath. "Anti-tampering mechanism. This thing is rigged to blow if we so much as breathe on it wrong." He keyed his comm, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Admiral Boyd, we've reached the bomb, but there's a problem." Hawkins' voice crackled in Boyd's earpiece, the transmission distorted by the depths of the Earth. "Admiral, we've hit a snag. The bomb's got some kind of biometric lock. We need Izar down here to disarm it." Boyd cursed under his breath. Nothing was ever easy. He turned to Zax, ready to coordinate their next move, when a flicker of movement caught his eye. Shadows detached from the walls, coalescing into figures clad in midnight black armor. The Shadow Guard, Izar's elite warriors, trained for this very contingency. Their stealth tech rendered them all but invisible, only the faint shimmer of their cloaking fields betraying their presence. Boyd and Zax reacted instantly, diving for cover as plasma bolts sizzled through the air. The Shadow Guard advanced with eerie synchronization, their movements fluid and precise, controlled by the neural links in their exoskeletons. Boyd rolled behind a sparking console, his rifle snapping up to his shoulder. He fired a burst at the nearest guard, but the shots ricocheted off the warrior's armor, leaving scorch marks but little else. Zax crouched beside him, his own weapon spitting plasma. "Their armor's too strong," he growled. "We need to find a weakness." Boyd's mind raced, analyzing the guards' movements, their formations. There had to be a pattern, a vulnerability they could exploit. Then he saw it. A flicker, a momentary distortion in the cloaking field whenever a guard fired their weapon. The power surge from the plasma discharge, overloading the stealth tech for a split second. "Aim for them when they fire," Boyd barked, already lining up his next shot. "The cloaking drops when they shoot." Zax nodded, his eyes narrowing in concentration. They moved as one, Boyd drawing the guard's fire while Zax picked them off one by one, his shots finding the gaps in their armor with uncanny precision. But even as they thinned the Shadow Guard's ranks, more poured in from the adjoining corridors, an endless tide of black-clad death. Boyd knew they couldn't keep this up forever. They needed to get to Izar. He keyed his comm, shouting over the din of battle. "Reeves, what's your status?" The lieutenant's voice came back, strained but determined. "We're holding the control room, sir, but they're pushing hard. We can't leave Izar unguarded." Boyd gritted his teeth. They were caught between the proverbial rock and a hard place. They needed Izar to disarm the bomb, but they couldn't risk the Shadow Guard freeing him. "Unless—" "But, sir, that'll affect you too." "We'll manage. Just do it, Lieutenant. That's an order." Boyd could hear Reeves' hesitation, but the man was a soldier. He knew how to follow orders. "Aye, sir. Venting atmosphere in 3, 2, 1... Boyd and Zax braced themselves as the air rushed out around them, the sudden decompression hurling the Shadow Guard off their feet. Boyd felt his suit stiffen, the emergency systems engaging to protect him from the vacuum. In the confusion, they made their move, bounding over the prone forms of the guards racing for the control room. They burst through the doors, Reeves sealing them shut behind them. Izar looked up from where he was bound, his eyes widening at the sight of Boyd and Zax, their armor pitted and scarred from the battle. Boyd hauled the Iridian to his feet, his voice a growl. "You're coming with us, Izar. We've got a bomb to disarm." As they hustled Izar towards the hangar bay, towards the shuttle that would take them down to the planet's core, Boyd could only hope they weren't too late. Earth's fate hung by a thread, and that thread was fraying fast. Boyd and Zax burst onto the Indomitable's hangar bay, the commandeered Iridian shuttle screeching to a halt on the deck plates. The shuttle's hatch hissed open, revealing a battered but defiant Izar, his wrists bound in energy cuffs. A squad of heavily armed human marines surged forward, roughly hauling the Iridian Emperor from the shuttle. Izar sneered as the marines shoved him to his knees. "You think this changes anything, Boyd? My legacy will endure long after your pathetic species fades into oblivion." Boyd ignored the taunt, signaling the marines to secure Izar in the brig. He turned to Zax, his face grim. "We need to move. That bomb won't wait forever." Zax nodded, following Boyd to a waiting drilling pod. They strapped in alongside a hand-picked team of soldiers, each one armed to the teeth with plasma rifles and demolition charges. Boyd sealed the hatch, his hand hovering over the launch controls. "All right, listen up," he barked, his voice filling the cramped confines of the pod. "We're drilling straight down to the Earth's core. It's going to be hot, it's going to be dangerous, and there's no guarantee we'll make it back. But we're the only thing standing between humanity and extinction. So let's get this done." The soldiers responded with a chorus of "Hooah!" their faces set with determination. Boyd punched the launch button, the pod shuddering as it disengaged from the Indomitable's hull. The Earth loomed before them, a once vibrant blue and green jewel now scarred by the ravages of war. The pod plunged into the atmosphere, its heat shields glowing cherry red as it punched through the thermosphere. Boyd gripped the controls, his knuckles white, as he guided the pod towards the coordinates Zax had extracted from Izar's mind. They hit the ground with a bone-jarring impact, the pod's drill bit chewing through bedrock and magma with equal ease. The temperature inside the pod began to climb, sweat beading on Boyd's brow as he watched the depth gauge tick ever downward. Suddenly the pod lurched violently, throwing the occupants against their restraints. Warning klaxons blared, red lights pulsing in the dim confines. Boyd fought with the controls, trying to keep the pod on course, but it was no use. They were veering off, the drill bit grinding and screeching as it tore through the Earth's crust at a steep angle. With a shuddering crunch, the pod slammed into a massive underground cavern, the impact cracking the hull plating. Superheated gases hissed through the breaches, scalding the exposed skin of the soldiers. Boyd ripped off his harness, staggering to his feet. "Masks on," he roared, his voice muffled by the hiss of escaping air. "Damage report now." One of the soldiers, a grizzled sergeant named Novak, looked up from a sparking console. Hull integrity compromised, life support failing, and the drill bits shot to hell. Boyd cursed under his breath. They were trapped with no way to reach the bomb, and to make matters worse— "Where's Izar?" Zax asked, his eyes scanning the pod's interior. A sickening realization dawned on Boyd. In the chaos of the crash, Izar had managed to slip his bonds, and now, armed with a weapon taken from an injured soldier, the Iridian Emperor was loose in the cavern. Boyd grabbed his rifle, checking the charge. "We find him," he growled, "and we finish this one way or another." They donned their heat-resistant armor, the suits hissing and clicking as they sealed around their bodies. Boyd and Zax took point, the soldiers falling in behind them as they ventured out into the cavern. Suddenly, a plasma bolt sizzled past his head, shattering a stalagmite. Boyd dove for cover, Zax and the soldiers scattering as more shots rained down on their position. Boyd peered over the rim of a boulder, his eyes narrowing as he saw Izar, perched on a high ledge, a plasma rifle clutched in his claws. "You're only prolonging the inevitable, Boyd," Izar called out, his voice distorted by the cavern's acoustics. "Surrender now, and I may grant you a quick death." Boyd's response was a barrage of return fire, the plasma bolts illuminating the cavern in strobing flashes. Izar ducked back, the shots pinging off the rock face around him. Boyd signaled Zax and the soldiers, directing them to flank Izar's position. They moved out, darting from cover to cover, as Izar rained fire down upon them. One soldier fell, a plasma bolt punching through his chest plate. Another took a glancing hit to the helmet, the ceramics melting and fusing to his skin. But Boyd and Zax pressed on, their weapons spitting deadly energy as they closed in on Izar. The Iridian Emperor was cornered, his back to a sheer drop into a roiling magma lake. "It's over, Izar," Boyd called out, his rifle trained on the Emperor's heart. "Come quietly and we'll make it quick." Izar laughed, the sound harsh and grating. "You still don't understand, do you, Boyd? I'll never surrender. Not to you, not to anyone." With a snarl, Izar activated a device on his wrist. A shimmering energy field enveloped his body, a personal shield that deflected the plasma bolts Boyd and Zax fired at him. Boyd gritted his teeth, his mind racing. They needed Izar alive to disarm the bomb, but with that shield in place they couldn't touch him, unless— Boyd's eyes fell on a massive stalactite hanging directly above Izar's position. It was a long shot, but it was their only chance. He caught Zax's eye, nodding towards the stalactite. Understanding dawned on the Iridian rebel's face. As one, they shifted their fire, plasma bolts lancing up to strike the base of the stalactite. Izar focused on maintaining his shield, didn't notice until it was too late. With a deafening crack, the stalactite broke free, plummeting down towards Izar. The Iridian Emperor looked up, his eyes widening in realization. He tried to leap clear, but the massive stone spear caught him mid-jump, crushing him beneath its weight and driving him down into the magma below. Boyd and Zax stood at the edge of the lake, watching as Izar's body sank beneath the molten surface, his shield flickering and dying. Boyd felt a grim satisfaction, tempered by the knowledge of what he had to do next. Boyd's eyes narrowed, his mind racing as he surveyed the unstable cavern walls. The magma bubbled and hissed mere feet away, the heat searing even through his armored suit. Izar's mocking laughter echoed off the stone, taunting them with their impending failure. But Boyd refused to let it end like this, not when they were so close. He turned to his soldiers, his voice raw with urgency. "Concentrate fire on the walls. Bring this whole damn cavern down on that scaly bastard's head." The soldiers obeyed without hesitation, their plasma rifles roaring as they unleashed a relentless barrage into the rock. Massive chunks of stone cracked and shattered, raining down in a thunderous avalanche. Zaiza's laughter turned to shrieks of rage as the rocks crashed down around him, burying him beneath tons of rubble. Boyd and his team dove for cover, shielding themselves from the deadly cascade. As the dust settled, an eerie silence fell over the cavern. Boyd coughed, his helmet's filters straining to clear the choking particles from the air. He staggered to his feet, his suit's servos whining with the effort. The soldiers fell to the task with grim determination, their armored gloves tearing at the rocks with desperate strength. Minutes that felt like hours crawled by, the bomb's detonation countdown ticking inexorably lower. Finally, a shout of triumph cut through the oppressive heat. They had found Isa, his once mighty form now a shattered ruin, crushed beneath the weight of the stone. Boyd wasted no time. "Get him to the bomb site now, move." They hauled Isa's corpse through the twisting tunnels, Boyd's mind reeling at the macabre absurdity of it all. The most powerful being in the galaxy, reduced to a broken key in a desperate lock. As they approached the bomb site, Boyd could see the disposal team frantically prepping the scanning equipment. They had already cracked open the bomb's outer casing, exposing a labyrinthine tangle of alien circuitry that pulsed with malevolent energy. "We're here," Boyd announced, his voice strained. "Do it." The technicians nodded, their faces grim. They positioned Isa's body on the scanner bed, the machinery humming to life as it mapped every contour of the Iridian's biology. A tense minute passed, then a soft chime. The scan was complete. "Interfacing now," the lead technician reported, his fingers flying over the control panel. "Biometric signature locked. Initiating disarming sequence." For a moment it seemed to be working. The bomb's angry red glow faded, its vibrations stilling. Boyd allowed himself a flicker of hope. But it was short-lived. A sudden hum filled the chamber, a hidden projector flaring to life. Isa's image sprang into being, his face a rictus of cruel amusement. "Foolish humans," the recording sneered. "Did you think I wouldn't anticipate this, that I would make it so easy? I prepared for every contingency. Even in death, I defeat you." Boyd's blood ran cold as Isa's next words rang out. "The bomb is equipped with a second detonator, primed to trigger the moment my biometric data is used in an attempt to disarm it. You've just doomed yourselves." The hologram flickered out, replaced by a flashing countdown. 5 minutes, no more. Panic erupted, soldiers and technicians alike shouting in dismay. Boyd silenced them with a roar. "Evacuate, all of you, get to the surface. Zax, lead them out." Zax shook his head. "Boyd, no, we can't leave you." "That's an order, soldier." Boyd's voice cracked like a whip. "I'm the only one with a chance of stopping this. Now go." Zax held his gaze for a long moment, a wealth of unspoken words passing between them. Then, with a crisp salute, he turned and began hustling the team towards the exit. As their footsteps receded, Boyd turned to face the bomb, his jaw set with iron resolve. He cracked his knuckles, then set to work, his fingers a blur over the control panel. He had 4 minutes and counting to unravel a doomsday device crafted by a mad alien genius. 4 minutes to save the Earth, to make every sacrifice and loss mean something. The clock was ticking, and Boyd had never backed down from a fight in his life. He sure as hell wasn't about to start now. Boyd's fingers flew over the bomb's control panel, sweat dripping into his eyes as he raced against the countdown. Isa's mocking hologram flickered in the corner of his vision, a testament to the Iridian Emperor's cruelty even in death. But Boyd refused to let that distract him, his focus absolute as he delved deeper into the bomb's complex systems. With a final triumphant keystroke, the countdown froze, the timer's crimson numbers halting just seconds from detonation. Boyd allowed himself a single, shuddering breath, his heart pounding against his ribs. But his relief was short-lived as a new alarm blared from the bomb's core, warning of a catastrophic overload. The disarming process had destabilized the power source, the energies that had been meant to shatter a planet, now threatening to consume everything in a cataclysmic blast. Boyd's mind raced, scenarios and calculations whirling through his thoughts. He had minutes, if that, before the bomb detonated, taking him and half the Earth with it. His gaze fell on the drilling pod, its armored bulk still intact despite the crash. A desperate plan formed, a final gambit born of necessity and sacrifice. Boyd's hands flew over the pod's controls, overriding safety protocols and initiating the emergency launch sequence. The pod shuddered, its engines roaring to life as it prepared to ascend back to the surface. Boyd turned to the bomb, his jaw set with grim determination. He couldn't leave, not yet. The pod needed time to reach a safe distance, to carry its deadly cargo as far from the Earth's heart as possible. Boyd's fingers danced across his suit's control panel, diverting all power to the energy projectors. A crackling field of force sprung to life around the bomb, a makeshift containment barrier that Boyd prayed would hold just long enough. As the pod's thrusters ignited, sending it hurtling upwards through the layers of rock and magma, Boyd stood alone in the cavern, watching the timer tick down on his suit's HUD. Memories flashed through his mind, a lifetime of battles and losses, of victories snatched from the jaws of defeat. He thought of his crew, the brave men and women who had followed him to the very end, who had given everything to protect their home. He thought of Zax, the unlikely ally who had proven that even in the darkest of times, hope and unity could still flourish. The bomb's energy readings spiked, the containment field straining against the building forces within. Boyd knew his time had come, but he faced it without fear, without regret. He had given all he had, and he could only trust that it would be enough. As the bomb detonated, a blinding flash of light consumed the cavern, engulfing Boyd in a maelstrom of unimaginable energies. The shockwave ripped through the Earth's crust, shaking the very foundations of the world. High above, the drilling pod burst from the ground, the shockwave propelling it even further into the sky. Zax and the survivors watched, their faces bathed in the unearthly glow of the subterranean explosion, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of what Boyd had sacrificed. In the days that followed, as the Iridian Empire crumbled and the resistance rose from the ashes, Zax emerged as a leader among the rebels, his experience and knowledge forged in the crucible of battle alongside Boyd. The humans and Iridians who had fought together now worked side by side to rebuild, to forge a new future free from the spectre of tyranny and oppression. And through it all Boyd's memory endured, a shining beacon of courage and selflessness, a reminder of the indomitable spirit that had carried humanity through its darkest hour. His sacrifice became a rallying cry, a symbol of hope for all those who continued the fight, who dared to dream of a better tomorrow, even in the face of overwhelming odds. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.